Okay, let's get into it. Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Hey there.
We're here to sort through the sources you've given us, try to make sense of all the different forces hitting Bitcoin right now.
Yeah, it's quite a mix.
Exactly. So our mission today is, well, to understand how things like global events, regulation, politics, even big institutions,
hmm
how they're all shaping the Bitcoin landscape you're seeing.
It's a really interesting time because, you've got your usual market stuff, but then these totally new crypto-specific pressures layered on top.
Like what we saw recently.
Right. Sources showed Bitcoin dipped below $103,000. And what seemed to trigger that?
The tensions in the Middle East, wasn't it, after that Israeli strike on Iran's nuclear program?
Precisely. And the whole crypto market cap took a hit. Lots of liquidations, basically, forced selling when prices dropped suddenly. Bitcoin and Ether led that slide.
So boom, geopolitics hits, price drops, immediate shock.
hmm
But even with that pretty significant correction, our sources also showed the market bouncing back, didn't they? Back over $104,000 reasonably quickly.
Yeah, resilience is part of the story, too.
And analysts were even talking about technical stuff, like a bull flag pattern. You know, that chart thing suggesting maybe more upward movement.
That's right. Potentially looking towards $120,000 if it can break past that resistance around $112,000.
And this was after it had almost touched its all-time high earlier in the week, before this pullback.
So what's really key, I think, is seeing how these conflicting signals can exist together. You get the geopolitical shock, the quick drop.
Yeah.
But then underlying technicals and maybe consistent buying pressure seem to absorb it faster than maybe they used to.
Suggesting the market structure might be changing. Different players involved, perhaps.
Could be. And speaking of players, there's the whole regulatory scene in the U.S. that's adding, well, another layer of pressure and maybe anticipation too.
Right. Sources definitely point to a big push for clarity there.
Exactly. We're seeing actual laws being discussed. The Senate moved forward that bipartisan Lummis-Gillibrand bill,
Yeah.
sometimes called the Genius Act in chatter.
Focus heavily on stable kinds, that one.
Mostly, yeah. But while it's aiming for a framework, it does stir up debate about, what it means for other crypto assets, or even for certain political figures, which we can touch on.
And the House.
The House passed the Clarity Act, big support there, trying to sort out who oversees what, the SEC or the CFTC.
Okay, so these aren't just like minor bureaucratic tweaks. It feels like Washington is serious about setting down some rules.
Seems that way.
And while rules can mean short-term jitters, having a clear framework is usually seen as good for the long run, right? For legitimacy, wider adoption.
Absolutely. And this regulatory stuff, it bumps right into politics, especially when you have public figures with significant skin in the crypto game.
Ah, yeah. The sources mention President Trump. Reports say he's made, what, $57.4 million from World Liberty Financial? Tied to NFTs?
That's the figure reported, and potentially billions more from the Trump P meme coin, depending on how things go.
Which understandably raises flags for some.
Mm.
Conflict of interest concerns? Sources mention Representative Raskin calling for an investigation, specifically citing a dinner Trump apparently hosted for investors in that Trump P coin.
Yeah, the worry flag there is about potential foreign influence. If, large anonymous buys of crypto tied to a politician's finances are happening, it's a concern being voiced.
It just highlights this really unique pressure point, doesn't it? Political figures' personal finances getting tangled up directly with crypto assets.
It adds a whole different kind of scrutiny and unpredictability, frankly, compared to traditional markets.
Meanwhile, kind of underneath all that noise, the politics, the market swings, there's this other huge force. Quieter maybe, but powerful. Institutional adoption.
Oh, yeah. The data from the sources is pretty stark. MicroStrategy just bought another $110 million worth of Bitcoin.
Bringing their total too. It's huge, isn't it?
Astonishing. 582,000 Bitcoin, worth over $62 billion today.
Wow. And BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF, IBIT.
It's become the fifth largest ETF by inflows globally in 2025, holding $72 billion in assets now.
Fifth largest globally. That just hammers home the amount of traditional money flowing in.
It really does. And it's not just the giants.
No, sources also mentioned Trump Media getting SEC approval for a funding round specifically to buy Bitcoin.
Yep. And Quantum Biopharma putting $5 million into crypto.
So companies outside the usual tech or finance circles are starting to feel comfortable putting Bitcoin on their books.
Exactly. So if you try and weave all these threads together, You've got the geopolitical reactions, the push for U.S. regulation, the political controversies and influence, and this steady institutional buying.
It means Bitcoin's price, its future, it's not about just one thing. It's this complex mix.
Yeah, it's an interplay. The market isn't just looking at charts anymore. It's dealing with global politics, Washington's next move, individual political stakes, and these massive flows of capital all at once.
Which kind of leaves us with a big question for you, the listener, to chew on. Given this, well, unprecedented mix of forces, you've got the geopolitical shocks, the regulatory moves, the political drama, and this undeniable institutional momentum, which one of those do you think will ultimately be the most significant driver for Bitcoin going forward?
Something to think about.